Welcome back to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center. I'm your host, Vicki Ross, and I'm very happy to have Anthony Baney, Zany Baney. You've been called at times, but it's not too zany what you want to talk about. I think it's very, very sensible and really important. So I've known you since Occupy, right?
Oh, yeah, we go back a long time.
Yes. So I know you've been very busy on some very important, lots of important things. So we're going to be talking especially about healthcare, we said, in this program. So if you want to introduce, your major topic for
absolutely. So obviously we know that New York State had passed the Compassionate Care Act for the use of medical marijuana in 2014.
Right.
And I'm with the Erie County Green Party and with Western New York Normal, so I've been working with them to try to make this program better.
Wait, say the name of the group again, because I think it's a little muffled.
Oh, sorry, the Erie County Green Party and Western New York Normal.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so the Compassionate Care Act, which was signed by Governor Cuomo and has been regulated by the New York State Department of Health, is supposed to allow for the medical use of many different forms of cannabis. And some of the concerns that have been raised primarily are the costs, but there's also a lot of other problems that the Department of Health hasn't necessarily started to address yet.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those issues that a dear friend of mine thought was extremely important to talk about is the fact that the licensed organizations through the New York State Department of Health are supposed to have certain ratios, including high CBD products. And this is extremely important because CBD is what is known as cannabidiol, and is actually non-psychoactive. But it's very beneficial for people with neurological disorders, especially those with seizure disorders.
Right, and especially children with seizure disorders. Is it not, or is it just for anyone equally?
Yeah, it can be very beneficial for a lot of different ailments.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, though, yes, children with seizure disorders are benefiting from the cannabidiol, especially the products that are high CBD and low THC. And these companies that are licensed are supposed to always have the high CBD, low THC. And we're finding that the two that are in Western New York don't always have that. And that's not fair.
No, it certainly isn't. So it's just that it's not available locally. Is that it?
Well, yes, the two licensed companies, the one is MedMan, and they actually weren't one of the original 42 organizations that applied for a license, but somehow they were granted a license after Bloomfield had closed, and now there's also PharmaCannis, who is in Amherst, and they both don't always carry the high CBD, low THC products, and that's not fair because that's a rule that was put into place by the New York State Department of Health. So they're technically not going by the rules set forth by the Compassionate Care Act.
So how can we get them to start doing it? What are you hoping that people will do?
Well, I think that people should contact their local representatives and also should contact the New York State Department of Health and, contact the Commissioner Howard Zucker and, inform them that, these two local companies should always have these high CBD, low THC products. And they should also have them available in all types of forms.
So the companies more so, or the Department of Health, do you think? Are the ones
I think people should contact the Department of Health. I think that people that are patients should contact those companies, absolutely, and voice their concerns. But I think that contacting the Department of Health would also be a good solution to that.
So and people can find different contacts. Actually, we have mostly legislators on our Organizing in Western New York list of contacts, but people can always Google the Department of Health. Unless, do you have a number for them handy or their website?
I don't, but at their website, they definitely have the staff directory. It's kind of hard to navigate when you're going through the call transfers. They'll transfer you to a different bureau that handles the medical marijuana program specifically. But then within that department, you can utilize, and within that office, you can also navigate to voice your concerns.
You know, it's so important, and I think medical marijuana is just part of it. I also, you know, we've done a lot of talking about racial justice on this show. And at the Western New York Peace Center, we have a racial justice task force. And certainly when I think about the way marijuana has been treated and people, you know, it's the new Jim Crow, not just for marijuana, but when we talk about, you know, the so-called war on drugs, and especially now when there are a lot of opioid deaths, people are finally, there's some talk about compassion, there's some compassion getting activated. So that's a good thing. I mean, we're glad about that, treating it like an illness. But on the other hand, people have right along, there are all kinds of people incarcerated for really the same thing, an addiction problem, a drug problem.
Right. And it's just, it's definitely, the fact that it was scheduled as it's called a Schedule 1 drug, right? Right, for marijuana?
Right. The Controlled Substances Act, the FDA declares it as a Schedule 1, and other agencies participate in research to try to differentiate the scheduling also.
Because I know that in Louisiana, you know, Baton Rouge or any of those, most of those southern tier states, you know, you'll get lost in a jail cell just for having a, you know, 0.5 joint on you or something like that. And that's kind of crazy, especially if it's helping someone, whether they have ADHD, whether they have, you know, a brain tumor. It doesn't matter. It's something so small and so innocent in the big scheme of things, whether like compared to like holding an illegal gun or something, which is obviously a huge problem.
Right.
Yeah, the criminal justice aspect side is an important topic involved in this issue, especially if you are looking at people that have disabilities or people that have illnesses or people that have the conditions that allow for the medical use of cannabis. You know, if they've been targeted by the police previously, then that's completely unfair.
Right. Right. Well, we've actually been part of some of the efforts to try to change the drugs regarding marijuana, the laws regarding marijuana, because it just doesn't make sense. And it's really been a financial thing more than anything, it seems, because certainly the research shows that there's all kinds of damage that comes from alcohol use, all kinds of addiction, health problems of all kinds, and that it really is devastating to people, and yet that is fully legal and let's say encouraged, you know, certainly advertised all the time and everything else. So we need the ways that drugs are treated. There's some very big racial overtones in the ways that different drugs are treated. There's big problems with the companies and the profit, you know, the profits are driving the laws, really. It seems to be.
Well, absolutely, and I mean, as I was pointing to with the issue with the two companies that are allowed to dispense medical cannabis locally, they're only going for what, in my view, is what's more profitable, and so they're not necessarily following the rules set forth by the New York State Department of Health.
Right.
And they are also supposed to have a certain ratio too. So not even just the amount of products, but they have to be very specific with what the ratio is in the product.
Well, sure. And that's why it's medical, right? So, you know, it's very specific as to dosage, as to being prescribed, etc. So they really need to follow, well, first we need laws that really approximate justice. I always think of that. And, you know, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And when they don't, then they should be changed. And when they do, then they need to be followed. So, I mean, it's simple but not easy.
Well, and I mean, a lot of this is driven by politics as well as money, and money drives politics. But the thing is that the governor is playing politics. He just signed the bill that allows veterans, and anybody else that has PTSD to use medical cannabis. But the bill was on his desk since January, so he waited all those months to sign the bill. And he signed it on Veterans Day, which shows that he was acting politically by doing so. And think about all the people during that time period that could have been helped with a doctor prescribing them, medical cannabis with their PTSD symptoms.
Right.
We got to start putting some dogs on these people, not physically, but
right. No, but well, this is one of the reasons why why we have this radio show. For one, to really publicize some issues and give people some options for action.
Right, because we gotta call them out. I'm one thing that they always teach you is not to be lazy, and I feel as though these politicians are being lazy. They're like, I'll get to it next week. I'm sorry, you're not in college anymore like me.
And I'll get to it in 11 months.
I'll
10 months.
I'll get to it right before the election,
right,
and then I'll forget about it after the election.
Right. So it is important. It's very important that people get the medical care they need, and certainly marijuana has been something that provides people some real relief. So we need healthful. Well, that's what we were talking about. Healthful health care. Now, in the meanwhile, we have the news break.
Yep.
So you're going to hold on with us, Anthony.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center. I'm your host, Vicki Ross, the executive director, and we are very proud and grateful to have Anthony Baney on the line with us, talking about medical marijuana and common sense drug laws.
Thank you, Rick. You've done so much great work yourself.
Oh, thanks. Well, there is. If only there wasn't so much of it to be done. There certainly is a slew of it. And if you will allow me, I do want to get to one thing that we were talking about, this Newtown remembrance of Sandy Hook that's going on this Wednesday, and we were sort of floundering around trying to remember where it was. Well, of course, it was at where I really should have guessed it's going to be, at the St. Joseph University Parish in the community room. So that's this Wednesday, the 6th, December 6th. It's the 5-year anniversary of the tragedy at Newtown, where 20 first graders, were they? Kindergartners were killed in an elementary school. And we still have not gotten common sense drug legislation or gun legislation. So that will be a showing of the movie. It will be at, I think it's, starting with the movie at, they're just south of the UB South campus. So we'll be there, and we hope you can join us. Actually, I don't know, if it's certainly free and open to the public. It starts at 7 p.m. There'll be a vigil part of it, a remembrance part of it, and there'll be showing of the Newtown, a documentary on the tragedy there and the town and how they've dealt with it. So I think, too, one of the things that has happened when we talk about drug laws, common sense drug laws, is that it gets all involved with guns and crime that are driven by addictions. Now, I don't know that how far to get into this, but I just want to say, I remember years ago, a friend of mine who was very involved with 12-step programs and certainly anti-drug, right? Very anti-drug. She even considered, I think she was a gluten addict or something.